Chapter 1001, Preliminaries 3. A moment later, the Tianyan kingdom had rushed from last place to the front rankings and was a few ranks away from the Lanxiang kingdom. Everyone sucked in a cold breath, unable to understand what happened and why the Tianyan kingdom's numbers increased at such a speed. 11th place, the Tianyan kingdom has reached 11th place. Do you think they could enter the top 10? I think it's difficult. The first 10 places are all renowned influences, and based on the Tianyan kingdom's strength, they might not be able to break into the first 10. True to their words, even though the Tianyan kingdom's numbers had an increasing trend in the following days, they were unable to obtain one of the first 10 places as they stabilized at 11th place. Even so, it caused the Tianyan kingdom's ranking in everyone's heart to change. 6 days passed very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, only 1 day was left. In these 6 days, other than the ordinary daily routine, everyone stopped by the venue and stared at the rocketing numbers, unable to take their eyes off them. Perhaps the rankings on the first day had revealed the final ranking for this tournament, as those rankings did not change within these few days. The Wuxuang Empire had still maintained their unshakable position as first while the Tianyan kingdom was still ranked 11th. I think there's no hope for the Tianyan kingdom to break through to the first 10 places. In a group, a young man shook his head while speaking with regret. The Lanxiang kingdom lost to the Tianyan kingdom in medical skills, yet they are beating them in this round of the tournament, so they cannot be considered as having completely lost. That might not be the case. This round is only a preliminary match, and as long as they are in the first 15 they'll be able to enter the semifinals. Therefore, a preliminary match doesn't mean anything. Some still maintained their hopes towards the Tianyan kingdom. After all, if it was just the same few influences winning every year, it would be too dry and dull. If young Luo Feng was able to make it in the finals like a dark horse, it would definitely awaken some excitement in this tournament. Inside the illusionary realm, young Luo Feng left the tree trunk and stood up from the ground. Her snow-white robes were spotlessly clean and a smile curled up on her breathtakingly gorgeous face. 6 days have passed and there's 1 day left for the tournament. That being the case, then, it's time for me to take action. In the bustling venue, everyone was staring at the first 3 kingdoms, unwavering and without turning. In their view, the few rankings at the back had been confirmed and would not have any changes. Instead, it was the first 3 empires that might possibly break their previous ranking. Especially with the Luoyu Empire following behind closely, with only a 20-point difference from the first-ranked, Wuxuang Empire. Just then a voice suddenly sounded and instantly attracted everyone's gaze. The Tianyan kingdom has broken through to 10th place. What? The Tianyan kingdom obtained the 10th rank. In an instant, everyone looked at the Tianyan kingdom's statistics. Watching the fiercely rising numbers, their faces became especially excited. What's going on? Why are the Tianyan kingdom's statistics rising so quickly? Oh god, Tianyan kingdom rushed to 7th place in a breath and directly skipped the 9th and 10th ranks. What's happening? Is there a problem with the system? Long Yuan was also shocked by the sudden change and hastily ordered his subordinates to investigate the situation. However, after investigating, they confirmed that there wasn't a problem with the illusionary realm. Chapter 1002, Preliminaries 4. That was to say, those statistics were real. Your Majesty, noble consort Ling finally got nervous and tightly grasped Long Yuan's hands while her face was filled with anxiety. There's no problem with the illusionary realm or the statistics. Then why did this situation occur? General Li, who stood off to the side, was silent for a while as his expression contained complicated emotions. It can only prove one point. The Tianyan kingdom has been concealing their strength from the start, and right now, this is their true strength. Concealing their strength? Noble consort Ling stared blankly. Why did they do this? I'm not sure. General Li turned towards Long Yuan and cupped his fists. Your Majesty, young Luo Feng is too mysterious. Are we really going to oppose her? A sinister glint flashed through Long Yuan's eyes as he coldly spoke. Even if her talent is outstanding, she's still young. I don't believe I can't deal with a little girl. Having heard what was said, General Li helplessly shook his head. It couldn't be helped that he was only a subordinate and had to comply with the emperor's every command. 5th place. The Tianyan kingdom has replaced the Lanxiang kingdom and is in 5th place. A shocked voice came from the crowd that was making a racket. In a short period of time, the Tianyan kingdom rushed to the 5th ranking. How would this not cause them to be shocked? At this moment, everyone's breath became tense as they didn't dare to look away from the Tianyan kingdom's numbers. 4th place. After witnessing the Tianyan kingdom overtaking the Fengyun kingdom, their hearts were not as shocked as at the start but instead, gradually calmed down. I wonder what rank the Tianyan kingdom can achieve. Can they break through to the first 3 ranks? There's a difference of 500 points between the 3rd and the 4th, and no matter how strong the Tianyan kingdom is, I doubt that they'll be able to break through in such a short time. That being said, there was still hope in the eyes of those people. They had forgotten about their own kingdoms, only wishing that young Luo Feng could break through into the first 3 places. Minutes and seconds passed, and the distance between the Tianyan kingdom and the Tianwei Empire was decreasing. The difference of 500 between these two parties had become a 100-point difference. Long Yuan's legs weakened and he collapsed on the dragon chair. He looked at the incessantly jumping figures of Tianyan kingdom with a pale face. We're finished. This time, not to mention surpassing the first 2 empires, he was unable to even secure one of the first 3 positions. Finally, the Tianyan kingdom's name once again jumped and went above the Tianwei Empire while the latter had dropped to the 4th ranking. Second. Not knowing who, someone released an impassioned shout and everyone started shouting along with them. Their eyes were filled with excitement as if they belonged to the Tianyan kingdom. Various kingdoms' envoys wanted to calm down their own geniuses, but unfortunately, they were all too young. For youngsters, it was the easiest to stir up their emotions. After witnessing a genius covering the skies, how could they not be excited? Even if they lost this tournament, they wouldn't have come for nothing. It's about time. General Li, immediately halt the tournament. Long Yuan furrowed his eyebrows and sternly commanded. They had already been overtaken by the Tianyan kingdom and he would never allow the other 2 empires to be overtaken. Otherwise, where would they, the 3 great empires, place their face at? Wait. After those youths heard Long Yuan's command, they became anxious. Isn't there still half a joss stick's time before the end? Why are you halting the competition early? This is unfair. Chapter 1003, Preliminaries 5. Fair. Long Yuan sneered and cast a warning gaze towards General Li. General Li helplessly stood up and spoke. Everyone, I only mentioned that the tournament would end 7 days later and did not specify a time. Therefore, I am ordering the stop of this match right now. Seeing that the Tianyan kingdom was about to rush to 2nd place, or perhaps even obtain 1st place, they had issued a command to halt the match. All the geniuses of various kingdoms were impassioned and no one imagined that the Tianwei Empire would be so shameless. Of course, in contrast to these small kingdoms, others from the 2 empires had agreed with the Tianwei Empire's actions. After all, they did not wish to be overtaken by the Tianyan kingdom and it was the best choice to cease the match right now. Men, stop the illusionary realm. General Li's voice was deep as he sternly commanded, and one person immediately went to stop the illusionary realm. The moment when the illusionary realm was closing, the Tianyan kingdom's placement continued to jump. Perhaps due to the closure of the illusionary realm, it caused the various kingdoms' rankings to be blurred. Even so, the sharp eyes of various kingdoms' geniuses saw the Tianyan kingdom's placement jump at the last moment. 2nd place, it must be 2nd place. If the Tianyan kingdom were given more time, the 1st place would be theirs. All the geniuses became excited and felt regret while even more were furious at Tianwei Empire's selfishness for their own interests. This was the most biased match they had ever experienced. Luckily the Tianyan kingdom didn't obtain 1st place. Long Yuan wiped his cold sweat and continued on, otherwise, the prestige of the 3 great empires would be thrown. If he had issued the command earlier, perhaps they would not have even obtained 2nd place. Thinking of the jump of the Tianyan kingdom's numbers at the last moment, Long Yuan was in a bad mood. Just then, the illusionary realm had been completely closed and those blurred words also gradually recovered their original clear state. Wuhui Empire will be 1st without a doubt. As for the 2nd, all the genius of various kingdoms raised their heads and looked at the statistics. However, after seeing the ranking, they were simultaneously stunned. The 1st ranking words were the largest and most prominent, but in that position, it displayed the 2 words Tianyan Kingdom. These two words were like two different faces looking at Long Yuan in ridicule. First, this is impossible. Long Yuan's expression suddenly turned ashen. There was a 20-point difference between first and second. How did the Tianyan kingdom jump to first in one shot? Despite what they imagined, they never thought that Tianyan kingdom's last leap in placement wasn't to the second rank, but instead, directly to the first rank. Within the illusionary realm. Under the azure blue skies, young Luo Feng looked at the figures fallen into the pool of blood. I didn't expect so many god-level spiritual beasts would appear simultaneously in the illusionary realm. However, I'd have to thank them for coming to gift points. Yi Eximo had been dumbstruck by young Luo Feng's actions. Just then, 5 god-level spiritual beasts rushed over and not knowing what attack young Luo Feng unleashed, these 5 beasts collapsed at the same time. I wonder with our current count, what rank can we get? Even if it's bad, we shouldn't be eliminated. Young Luo Feng raised her brows and spoke. During the 7 days in the illusionary realm, she did not take action for 6 days. Therefore, she did not dare to think that their ranking would be very high. Chapter 1004, Preliminaries 6. Suddenly, young Luo Feng felt changes in the illusionary realm and frowned. I remember there should be another hour before the tournament ended, so why am I sensing that the realm is closing? When her words were spoken, she felt an attraction force pulling her out. After recovering her senses, she had already left the illusionary realm and was standing in the middle of the venue. At the same time, geniuses of various kingdoms appeared by her side and their eyes were also confused, seemingly not understanding why the tournament ended earlier than it should have. When young Luo Feng and the others appeared, the statistics displayed by the illusionary realm also disappeared. As such, everyone was unaware of the various kingdoms' rankings. Miss Yun, Qing Mu laughed heartily and walked towards young Luo Feng. How are you feeling? Young Luo Feng modestly smiled. It's still alright. I hope our ranking won't be too bad. When she finished speaking, everyone who was originally talking with their own kingdom's geniuses had instantly turned to look at young Luo Feng, while an odd emotion appeared on their faces. Young Luo Feng's heart thumped. Could it be that our ranking was very bad? Even if I didn't fight for 6 days, our ranking shouldn't be bad to that extent, right? Furthermore, the tournament rules were that as long as they exceeded 500 points, they could enter the semifinals. With the spiritual beasts she killed, they had far exceeded the condition and it was impossible for them to be eliminated. Qing Mu's mouth twitched. Won't be too bad. Did that mean she believed that their ranking was so-so? If the Tianyan kingdom's result was considered so-so, how could the geniuses from the other kingdoms say anything? Those people who just left the illusionary realm were still unaware of the situation. Just when they wanted to ask the other geniuses from their own kingdoms, those people uniformly shut their mouths and waited for the Tianwei Empire's announcement. As a result, they were unaware of what happened. And Lan, your Wuhui Empire must be first again during this match. Congratulations. The young man was faintly smiling as he spoke and did not pay attention to this clamorous venue as he walked to the side of Lan, who had a delicate and pretty appearance. A smile appeared on Lan's delicate face. We're both the same. No one can shake the position of your Luoyu Empire. Haha, you're right. The martial arts tournament this time, I expect that the first 3 rankings have been occupied by us. However, the Wuhui Empire is our target for improvement, and one day we will overtake you. Alright, I'll be waiting. The encounter between the two empires' young geniuses was not contentious like everyone imagined but instead was filled with fighting spirit. It was just that. Those who knew the ranking, after hearing the discussion between these two empires and their respective fawning, had a weird expression when looking at them. Their expression caused the two great empires to stare blankly, seemingly not understanding the meaning. Kiki. General Li cleared his throat. His complicated gaze looked towards everyone present as he solemnly spoke. Since you're all out, then I shall announce the first few rankings. The geniuses of the 3 great empires had a complacent smile on their faces. In their opinion, the first 3 places had been occupied by them. 3rd place, Luoyu Empire. The complacent smile on those youths from Luoyu Empire instantly disappeared as their expression contained astonishment while looking at General Li. 3rd place. Our Luoyu kingdom actually got 3rd place. Then who's the second? The Tianwei Empire. I didn't expect the Tianwei Empire to actually overtake our Luoyu Empire this time around. We've underestimated them. Chapter 1005, Taking the First Place Again. As if not hearing the clamor, General Li went on, the runner-up is the Wuxuang Empire. The runner-up was the Wuxuang Empire. Slightly narrowing his eyes, and Lan turned to the players of the Tianwei Empire, saluted to them and said, "Congratulations, you win the first place this time. But I will take it back next year." Haha, we're flattered. Not noticing Long Yuan's sullen face at all, the players of the Tianwei Empire laughed in response. Since the Luoyu Empire took third place and the Wuxuang Empire won second, then their Tianwei Empire must be the winner. Some players had whistled triumphantly, celebrating the victory of the Tianwei Empire. General Li's face turned black, and he took a deep breath. The winner is the Tianyan Kingdom. The Tianyan Kingdom. Those who didn't know the situation froze after hearing those three words. The winner was the Tianyan Kingdom. Did they hear it right? How could the Tianyan Kingdom get the first place in the preliminary contest? The people of the two empires were so shocked that they quickly turned their eyes to the Tianyan Kingdom team. Among these people, the Tianwei Empire people looked most upset, who kept glaring at the Tianyan Kingdom players. The winner is the Tianyan Kingdom. That's impossible. There must be something wrong. How can they get to the top? Qing Mu frowned. He didn't like the attitude of the Tianwei Empire team, who just refused to admit they were defeated. The Tianyan Kingdom was the winner of this contest. With so many people witnessing it, how could it be false? His Majesty wouldn't have ordered an early end to the contest if he wasn't trying to prevent the Tianyan Kingdom from winning. Unfortunately, even though he stopped it early, first place was still taken by the Tianyan Kingdom. Long Yuan's face darkened and he stared at Qing Mu sharply. This old man, a citizen of the Tianwei Empire, ignored his own country's interests and took sides with a foreign country. It seems that he really shouldn't allow him to stay here. Yi Eximo had come to his senses from his initial astonishment. He gave Luo Feng a big hug, an excited smile on his handsome face. "Sister-in-law, did you hear that? We are the winner, ha ha ha." Holding his head high, Yi Eximo felt so proud and elated. Qing Mu smiled, "But Miss Yun, I have something to ask you. Why was your team's score low in the beginning, but soared afterward?" This was exactly what the other people wanted to ask. Now Qing Mu asked the question for them. Yi Eximo laughed and interposed, "That's because my sister-in-law didn't participate in the contest for the first 6 days." What? Luo Feng didn't participate in the contest until the 7th day. The crowd was obviously shocked by Yi Eximo's words and no one would expect such an answer. The poorest performers in their eyes jumped to the 11th place just in 6 days. "Alas," said Qing Mu with a bitter smile, "Miss Yun, I knew you were a talent, but I'm still frightened by your talent. In one day you helped your team reach first place from the 11th. I'm afraid that no one can match you in this aspect." Hearing Qing Mu's words, the crowd, who only paid attention to Luo Feng's subordinates, suddenly realized a fact. The difference between the 11th and the first place was huge. But she eliminated this gap within a single day. Chapter 1006, Semifinal 1. This woman's fighting talent and medical skill were equally superb and both were shocking. Ahem. General Li coughed, cleared his throat and said, "The preliminaries are now over, and there are a total of 15 teams whose score reached 500, so they will enter the semifinal contest. Now I'll tell you about the rules of the semifinal." Quote. In the semifinal contest, each team shall choose 5 players to compete. And to be fair, the 5 players can't take part in the final contest, so think about it before you make the decision. The crowd fell silent. They were supposed to send the strongest players so as to win the semifinal. However, there was a new rule that the players who participated in the semifinal couldn't participate in the final contest. So they began to worry about who they should choose. They couldn't choose the strongest players, because they had to save them for the final. However, if they chose the weakest ones, they might be eliminated in the semifinal. I'll give you some time to make your decision, and you can discuss it. General Li's eyes turned sharp. Besides, until you choose your players, the other teams won't know which players you will choose. It meant that no one would know who would be their opponents, which increased the difficulty of the contest. At this time, General Li's commanding voice rang again. You shall decide it in a quarter of an hour, and tell me the names of the players you choose when time is up. Besides, only 5 teams will enter the final contest. Think it over. Hearing General Li's words, the crowd began to whisper to each other, but they dared not speak too loudly for fear of being heard by their opponents. Sister-in-law, pick me, said Yi Eximo, frowning. Young Luo Feng shook her head. You shouldn't participate in the semifinal. Then she turned her eyes to the rest and said, raising her eyebrows, Tan Shu, Chu Hongye, Ji Yuli, Yu Tongtong, and Lin Ruobai. The 5 of you are going to compete in the semifinal. Among the 5, except Lin Ruobai, who was an Earth-level advanced rank spirit cultivator, the others were only Earth-level low-rank or intermediate rank spirit cultivators. They were the weakest members of the 2 corps. Yi Eximo paused and frowned. Sister-in-law, they are only Earth-level spirit cultivators. I'm afraid they can't finish this task. Let me participate in this round and I'll take the first place for you. You need to attend the final contest and shouldn't participate in the semifinal. Besides, she paused and smiled, I have faith in my people. I have faith in my people. Hearing Yun Luo Feng's words, the 5 people all held their heads high and said in an impassioned tone. Boss, we won't let you down. Unlike the other team, Yun Luo Feng didn't keep her voice down, and her people didn't conceal themselves either. So all the people present turned their eyes to her. Pondering, a well-dressed young man in the Tianwei Empire team rolled his eyes and raised a grim smile over his lips. Miss Yun, Qing Mu looked at the players Yun Luo Feng chose and said hesitantly, I think you should pick some sky-level spirit cultivators, or else your team might be eliminated. No, it's not necessary. Chapter 1007, Semi-Final 2. They can handle it with their strength. Qing Mu shook his head and sighed, a worried look in his old eyes, but he couldn't say anything because Yun Luo Feng had already made up her mind. The time is up. Please submit your name list and I'll explain the rules of the semi-final to you. General Li's cold and deep voice broke the ice and made the atmosphere livelier. All the teams immediately wrote the names of the chosen players on a slip of paper. A eunuch took them and handed them to General Li. The semi-final will be a 1 versus 1 contest. The winner will stay and the loser will leave. And the final ranking will be based on the number of survivors. As soon as General Li finished, Chu Feihua suddenly walked to Yun Luo Feng, and said to her with a sullen face, Yun Luo Feng, your good luck is over. I'll make you lose badly this time. Obviously, in Chu Feihua's mind, Yun Luo Feng won the first place in the preliminary contest because of luck. In fact, this woman didn't have great strength. Besides, she was so stupid as to choose 5 Earth-level cultivators for the semifinal, which was literally equivalent to admitting defeat. Now that you've submitted the list of the chosen players, I hereby announce that the contest begins. General Li randomly drew out 2 pieces of paper and said, the first round will be the Fengyun Kingdom versus the Wuxuang Empire. Upon hearing this, the players of the Fengyun Kingdom, who were still full of fighting spirit, lost their hearts. They never thought that they would meet the Wuxuang Empire in the first round. In order to preserve their fighting power, the Fengyun Kingdom team chose the weakest player among the 5 in the first round. The result was as everyone expected. The Fengyun Kingdom player lost, and lost badly. He didn't even resist a single attack of his opponent before he was kicked out of the ring. There was no suspense about the subsequent rounds. The players of the 3 empires were simply invincible, and their status was unshakable. Of course, each of the 5 players of each country could only fight once. The loser would leave and the winner would stay. The final ranking would be based on the number of winners. The Lanxiang Kingdom versus the Tianyan Kingdom. It happened that the Lanxiang Kingdom player was the Tianyan Kingdom's first opponent. Let me fight with him. Yu Tongtong volunteered, frowning. No, it'll be too dangerous for you to confront the Lanxiang Kingdom player. Let us. It's all right, I won't hold boss back. Yu Tongtong stepped out resolutely and gazed at the man who was walking onto the ring, her voice firm and confident. A woman. In the ring, the man glanced at Yu Tongtong who was walking toward him, his eyes filled with contempt. I won't have any mercy on a woman. Be careful, you may be killed by me. Arrogantly holding his head high, Li Yong sneered. Undeterred, Yu Tongtong stepped firmly into the ring. Can we start now? She turned to the referee and asked. From the very beginning, she didn't look at Li Yong, as if she ignored his existence. After all, Yu Tongtong had followed young Luo Feng for so long, and she copied the air of haughtiness from her boss. Enraged by her, Li Yong shouted and rushed to Yu Tongtong. Yu Tongtong turned around, quickly pulled out her weapon and resisted Li Yang's attack. Bang! Li Yang's powerful force directly struck her body via this attack and made her shake and retreat 2 steps. In the first round, Li Yong gained the upper hand. Chapter 1008, Semi-Final 3. The audience all shook their heads. The Tianyan Kingdom was bound to lose this time. Suddenly, Yu Tongtong flexed her wrist and shot numerous throwing knives that were all aimed at Li Yang's neck. Li Yong, who was going to continue to attack, quickly withdrew his spiritual energy and dodged the flying daggers. You are really mean. How dare you use a concealed weapon? Yu Tongtong sneered. It's not a concealed weapon, it's an overt weapon. There's no rule that only one weapon can be used in the contest. Only you Tianyan Kingdom people would resort to such dirty means. Unfortunately, no matter how many means you have, they are all useless against me. At this moment, Li Yong remembered what Chu Feihua told him before the contest: if you meet any player of the Tianyan Kingdom, just kill them. A murderous look flashed across his eyes and he rushed to Yu Tongtong again. Because of the great gap in strength, Yu Tong could hardly resist him. She could only defend against Li Yang's attack, but couldn't attack him actively. Bang! Suddenly, Li Yong punched Yu Tongtong on her body. She quickly moved back and vomited a mouthful of blood, her face ghastly pale. Young Luo Feng, Chu Feihua glanced at the girl standing expressionlessly beside him and said coldly, as far as I know, you are an affectionate person. If you kneel down and beg me now, I may ask Li Yong to spare her life. As if not hearing him, young Luo Feng watched the battle in the ring without blinking. Chu Feihua sneered, fine, then don't blame me for being rude. He turned to Li Yong in the ring and ordered harshly, Li Yong, kill this woman. Hearing his words, Li Yong released a more aggressive aura, which struck at Yu Tongtong like a sword. However, when he just reached the front of Yu Tongtong and was going to kill her with his sword, Yu Tongtong suddenly grabbed his sword. A light of astonishment flickered across Li Yang's eyes, and he exerted a greater force with his hands and pressed the sword down hard. Don't struggle in vain. The earlier you die, the earlier you are relieved. Blood ran down from the woman's palms, but she seemed unconscious of the pain and even smiled. As I said, I won't hold the team back. Quote. Bang. Yu Tongtong suddenly moved her hands and snapped Li Yang's longsword into 2 pieces, one of which she held in her hand and threw at Li Yong. Greatly shocked, Li Yong turned sideways to dodge the broken sword, which stuck into a pillar. I don't want to lose and I won't lose. Yu Tongtong wiped the blood from her lower lip and dashed at Li Yong at a breakneck speed. Before he had any time to react, Yu Tongtong had reached the front of him. He had no choice but ward off the attack with his bare hands. At this time, Yu Tongtong, who was also bare-handed, suddenly had a sharp sword in her hand. Thrust. The sword pierced his palm. Ah! A shrill cry resounded throughout the field. Li Yong yanked out the sharp sword from his palm, and covered his injured palm with his other hand. With a pale face, he stared at Yu Tongtong and gnashed his teeth, you backstabber. You launch a sneak attack against me again. Yu Tongtong smiled coldly, my boss told me that as long as we win, we can use every possible means. On this continent, win and you are the king, lose and you are the outcast. No matter how you become the king, people will only know that you are the king of the continent. Chapter 1009, Semi-Final 4. As long as you won, no one would care how you managed to win. Success justified any action. Bitch, I'm going to kill you. Li Yong rushed forward angrily and kicked toward Yu Tongtong's stomach. Yu Tongtong, with sharp eyes, agilely sidestepped him and then shot numerous arrows from her hands as she rushed behind Li Yong. Even though Li Yong quickly dodged these arrows, his palms were still pierced by 2 arrows and he was nailed to a column. Li Yong, what's wrong with you? You can't even dodge those arrows. Come on, shake the arrows out with your spiritual power. Chu Feihua frowned and cursed angrily. At the moment, Li Yong had changed from initial shock to panic. He, who was still furious 1 minute ago, suddenly found that he could no longer use spiritual energy since his hand was pierced by the sword. Otherwise, Yu Tongtong wouldn't be able to escape from his kick, nor could the arrows hurt him. Did you poison that sword? Li Yang asked, clenching his teeth. It's not important now. You've lost. Yu Tongtong laughed and looked at General Li. He can't move. You can declare me the winner. With a complex look, General Li sighed, and then he glanced at Long Yuan and announced, the Tianyan Kingdom wins. The crowd was in an uproar. Under the admiring gaze of many people, Yu Tongtong walked back to the Tianyan Kingdom team. After Li Yang was taken down by his teammates, the contest resumed again. As expected, the players of the three empires all won and no one had lost. The Fengyun Kingdom and the Lanxiang Kingdoms didn't encounter any player of the three empires, so they didn't lose either. Even the underdog Tianyan Kingdom won the following rounds. However, the other players knew about the trickiness of the Tianyan Kingdom players, so they were very careful during the battle for fear of being stealthily attacked. However, no matter how careful they were, they still lost. The Luoyu Empire's player, who was invincible in the previous rounds, happened to come across the Wushuang Empire's player. Though the former was quite strong, he was no match for the latter and ended in failure. Now, besides the Wushuang Empire, only the Tianwei Empire and the Fengyun Kingdom had never failed. Next, the Tianyan Kingdom versus the Tianwei Empire. General Li's voice rang again. Upon hearing this, the audience quieted down. The Tianwei Empire and the Tianyan Kingdom met at this time, and both of them only had one player who hadn't fought yet. In this round, the two countries that hadn't lost would have to decide which one would win. Xiaobai. Young Luo Feng frowned and turned her eyes to Lin Ruobai. Lin Ruobai blinked adorably. Master, don't worry, I will not allow myself to lose, because I am your disciple, and if I lose, you'll be disgraced. She didn't fight for the Tianyan Kingdom, or the members of the two corps. She only fought for one purpose, to not disgrace her master. Since she had become Yun Luofeng's disciple, no failure was allowed in her life. If she lost, she would bring shame on Yun Luofeng. Lin Ruobai's eyes turned resolute, and she stared at the man walking into the ring. It was Zheng Lesheng, who was a sky-level intermediate rank spirit cultivator. Chapter 10:10. Xiaobai's Battle 1. Zheng Lesheng looked at Lin Ruobai, who was walking firmly towards him and couldn't help laughing. His eyes tilted upward and were filled with taunts. Your name? He asked haughtily, raising his eyebrows. Lin Ruobai slightly bit her lip and stepped into the ring. Lin Ruobai. Her voice sounded tender, cute and harmless. If it were another man, he might not be able to resist the charm of the girl. However, Zheng Lesheng only had shame in his heart. Without the Tianyan Kingdom, how would the Tianwei Empire rank the fourth in the preliminary contest? To you, I will not relent. Zheng Lesheng walked slowly to Lin Ruobai, held his head high and spoke to her with a voice that only two of them could hear. However, if you are willing to curse Yun Luofeng loudly here, perhaps I will spare your life. Irritated by his words, Lin Ruobai snorted, in your dreams. It's your choice. Then I won't show any mercy to you. Boom. A powerful aura surged out of Zheng Lesheng's body and was thunderously pressed against Lin Ruobai's petite body. At the same time, his palm fiercely struck Lin Ruobai and slammed her body away. She couldn't resist him. Certainly, how could an Earth-level advanced rank spirit cultivator resist a Sky-level intermediate rank spirit cultivator? This battle was like a one-sided slaughter. Lin Ruobai couldn't even resist him. Watching the contest in the ring, Yun Luofeng frowned and an icy gleam flashed through her eyes. They had won all the other rounds, and even if Lin Ruobai lost in this round, they could still make it to the final. So she raised her hand and was going to stop the contest. However, just then, from the corner of her eyes, she saw Lin Ruobai stand up from the ground. And she also noticed the resolute light in her eyes. She wanted to fight, not to give up. Feeling Lin Ruobai's emotion, Yun Luofeng paused and slowly put down her hand. Sister-in-law, said Yi Eximo anxiously, your disciple can't resist Zheng Lesheng. I think we'd better call it a day. Yun Luofeng shook her head, wait a minute. See how things develop. Let's intervene when we have to. Since Lin Ruobai wanted to fight by herself, she didn't mind giving her a chance. Anyway, with her strength, she could intervene at any time. Bang! Lin Ruobai's body flew out again, and she kept vomiting blood. However, she struggled to stand up from the ground, her eyes bright and resolute. Don't worry, I won't let you die easily. Otherwise, I can't take my revenge on you guys to my heart's content. Giving a sneer, Zheng Lesheng ran to Lin Ruobai and kicked her in the stomach. Lin Ruobai fell down so hard that she felt her bones almost fall apart, and the pain was simply unbearable. Ahem. She vomited another mouthful of blood, bravely stood up again, but she covered her abdomen with her hands, her cute little face ghastly pale. This was a unilateral devastation. In the face of Zheng Lesheng's attack, Lin Ruobai kept retreating. After a while, she was all black and blue, looking miserable. She stood up but not as quickly as before, as if she had reached her limit. It's enough. Give it up. Someone under the ring couldn't stand it anymore and tried to persuade her. Xiaobai, you are already very strong, but your opponent is much stronger than you. Just stop it. The members of the two corps looked anxious too. Getting along well with her these days, they had taken the lively and cute girl as their friend, so they didn't want her to suffer so much. Chapter 10-11. Xiaobai's Battle 2. Strong. Lin Ruobai laughed and her laughter was sad and shrill. No, I'm not strong at all. If I am really strong, then why can't I beat this enemy? How can I hold you back? But I don't want to give it up. Lin Ruobai raised her bruised little face, because I don't want to hear people say that such a strong master has such an incapable disciple. For the sake of master, even if there is only slim hope, I will still try my best. The whole field quieted down, and all the players looked at Lin Ruobai with complicated eyes. This girl, who was only about 14 years old, could have such a great resolution. Even if she failed in this battle, people would still admire her spirit. Hope. Zheng Lesheng walked slowly to Lin Ruobai's side, looked down at her and said with a deliberately lowered voice, "You already have no hope. By the way, let me tell you that this time, no one from the Tianyan kingdom can leave. Especially that good-looking woman called Luo Feng. If she is taken to the military camp to serve as a prostitute, the soldiers will surely enjoy her." Ha ha. Of course, Zheng Lesheng deliberately said this to irritate Lin Ruobai. After all, no matter how strong the Tianwei Empire was, it could not detain other countries' players or it would arouse public indignation. Even the other two empires would not allow this to happen. Unfortunately, Lin Ruobai, simple and pure-hearted, always believed what others said. Upon hearing this she became furious and punched Zheng Lesheng in the chest. Zheng Lesheng easily grabbed Lin Ruobai's arm and sneered, angry. "No, it's more than this. None of your companions can survive this time." Lin Ruobai, trembling with anger, spat into Zheng Lesheng's face and said angrily, "Shameless asshole." Zheng Lesheng's eyes darkened. He touched the spit on his face and his grim eyes were fixed on Lin Ruobai like daggers. Such an ill-bred bitch must be a motherless bastard. Lin Ruobai's body froze and her face turned pale. Her pupils constricted and her hands and feet turned cold. Mother. She really didn't have a mother. For her mother was taken away by the bad guys. However, anyone who called her a motherless bastard must die. In the ring, a wind suddenly blew fiercely and the girl standing in the center slightly raised her head. Her eyes were bloodshot and glowed with strange red light. Her strength instantly improved greatly, and she changed from an Earth-level advanced rank spirit cultivator to a Sky-level low-rank spirit cultivator, then a Sky-level intermediate rank spirit cultivator, and finally a Sky-level advanced rank spirit cultivator. In the blink of an eye, her strength had improved by 3 levels, which stunned everyone present. Dumbfounded, Zheng Lesheng stared at Lin Ruobai in astonishment, breaking out in a cold sweat and clenching his teeth. Lin Ruobai, don't think that you can defeat me by forcibly improving your strength with some secret technique. You will not be able to defeat me, because I have a solid foundation but you don't. As if not hearing him, Lin Ruobai coldly stared at him with her glowing red eyes. You should die. Blood was dripping down from her body and dyed her clothes red, just like the color of her eyes. Chapter 10-12. Xiaobai's Battle 3. At this time, Lin Ruobai finally made a move. Her expression was no longer as cute as before, and she looked like a ruthless slayer. As the intense murderous aura around her spread out, she suddenly rushed to Zheng Lesheng. Long Yuan rose sharply and snapped, "Come on, stop her." Unfortunately, it was too late. Lin Ruobai suddenly had a sword in her hand and she pierced Zheng Lesheng's throat with it. It seemed that the blood spurting from his neck stimulated her, and a greedy light flashed across her bloodshot eyes. Kill. She was going to kill more people. Only blood could wash away her inner pain. Sister-in-law, what's wrong with Xiaobai? Yi Eximo was stunned. Looking at Lin Ruobai in the ring, he felt that she looked so strange at that moment. Yun Luofeng frowned, "I don't know." When Xiaobai accepted Xiaobai as her disciple, Xiaomo told her that Lin Ruobai had a special bloodline that contained a powerful force. If her guess was right, Xiaobai had activated the power in her blood just now. "Master, Xiaobai is out of her mind. You must stop her, otherwise, she will become a devil." Xiaomo's anxious voice rang in Yun Luofeng's soul. At that moment, several imperial guards had rushed to Lin Ruobai in the ring and attacked her with a murderous aura. Obviously, they wanted to kill her. Suddenly, a white figure flashed and came before Lin Ruobai. It was Yun Luofeng. She raised her hands and blocked the attack of the guards. Caught off guard, the guards were slammed out of the ring and awkwardly fell to the ground with a thud. Xiaobai, Yun Luofeng held Lin Ruobai's body, and affectionately pressed her head onto her shoulder. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have let you participate in the contest. Don't worry, I'm here, no one can bully you." Clank. Lin Ruobai's fingers loosened and the bloody longsword in her hand fell to the ground with a clank. Yun Luofeng felt her shoulders wet with liquid. She let go of the girl in her arms and carefully wiped the tears from her eyes, speaking to her tenderly. "I became responsible for your life from the moment I took you as my disciple. It doesn't matter whether your mother is with you or not. I'll help you find her and bring her back." With sharp ears, Yun Luofeng had heard what Zheng Lesheng said to Lin Ruobai. But he was dead, so she couldn't make him pay for what he said. "Master," quote. With tears glittering in the corners of her eyes, Lin Ruobai smiled silently. "I won. I didn't disgrace you." At this moment, the red light in Lin Ruobai's eyes had dissipated, and her eyes became as clear and bright as before. Seeing her bright smile, Yun Luofeng felt her heart skip a beat. Fortunately, Lin Ruobai had quickly recovered her senses. She couldn't imagine what would have happened if Lin Ruobai hadn't returned to normal. Thinking of this, Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes unconsciously. She went to Zheng Lesheng's body, kicked it and came back to Lin Ruobai. Finally recovering from his initial shock, Long Yuan flew into a rage when he saw Zheng Lesheng's body. "Lin Ruobai, how dare you commit murder in front of me? General Li, catch them." Well, General Li hesitated for a while and responded carefully, "Your Majesty, a sword has no eyes. There is no rule that a player will be punished for accidentally killing their opponent." Chapter 1013, Xiaobai's Battle 4. Although the one who was killed was a player of the Tianwei Empire, General Li still had to recite the rule. Otherwise, the Tianwei Empire would be ridiculed by the public. Long Yuan snorted, "There isn't a rule that a player can kill their opponent either. They are unforgivable because they killed our player." All the other players had a look of disdain on their faces. Zheng Lesheng wanted to kill Lin Ruobai just now but Long Yuan didn't stop him. But when their player was killed, he suddenly became the embodiment of justice. Even the Wushuang Empire and the Luoyu Empire people frowned. Apparently, they were annoyed by Long Yuan's favoritism. However, now the three empires sang the same tune, so they didn't say anything. "General Li, what are you waiting for? Arrest them," Long Yuan shouted in a cold voice. "Yes, Your Majesty." General Li made an obeisance and ordered the guards to besiege the players of the Tianyan Kingdom. "Your Majesty," Qing Emu's face greatly changed, "your behavior is very improper. If you show favoritism like this, how will the public view our Tianwei Empire?" "Qing Mu, you want to betray your country?" Long Yuan glanced at Qing Mu and asked coldly. He accused Qing Mu of treason just because the latter couldn't bear his behavior and tried to stop him. If Qing Mu insisted in stopping him, he would probably be implicated. Figuring this out, Yun Luofeng raised her hand and stopped Qing Mu who still wanted to persuade Long Yuan. I can handle this. Qing Mu paused and then nodded helplessly. Miss Yun, you are the pride of our physicians. Today, I must defend you, even at the expense of my life. What really mattered was never the icing on the cake but timely help. In this situation, Qing Mu still bravely stood up for her, which Yun Luofeng would never forget in her lifetime. Ladies and gentlemen, Yun Luofeng didn't look at Long Yuan, but turned to the players. Do you really think Xiaobai was in the wrong? As you've seen, Zheng Lesheng wanted to kill her first and she was just defending herself. If Zheng Lesheng hadn't died, my disciple would have died. What would you do if it were you? The crowd fell silent. If the enemy they faced wanted to kill them, and they had the ability to fight back, they would certainly kill the enemy first. Yun Luofeng raised the corners of her lip and a wicked smile appeared on her gorgeous face. However, the Tianwei Empire intends to abuse public power to retaliate against us, and punish us in the name of the referee. If they can do this to my disciple now, they will do the same to you in the future. How can we trust a referee who won't act fairly? How can we trust a referee who won't act fairly? Her words resounded throughout the field and struck a chord with the crowd. Indeed, how could they trust a referee who wouldn't act fairly? This matter has nothing to do with the Tianyan Kingdom. The Tianwei Empire just wants to take revenge for a private grudge in the name of the referee. If we turn a blind eye to this, will we be the next Tianyan Kingdom? Though the Tianyan Kingdom had greatly impressed them in the previous contests, they would not stand up for the Tianyan Kingdom. It was every man for himself. There were very few people who were as selfless as Qing Mu. Therefore, Yun Luofeng put the Tianwei Empire on the opposite side of these countries, and told them that the Tianyan Kingdom's end would probably be their future. Chapter 10-14, Final 1. Long Yuan's face changed greatly, and he glared at Yun Luofeng and snapped, Yun Luofeng, stop misleading people with your evil words. I believe the players here will never be deceived by your words. However, instead of echoing him, the players whispered to one another and looked at Long Yuan with vigilance. Obviously, Yun Luofeng's words had taken root in their hearts and struck a chord with them. Your Majesty, General Li lowered his head and tried to convince him, if you want to solve Yun Luofeng, you can do it at any time but not now. If you finish her here, I'm afraid it will annoy the other countries. After all, Yun Luofeng came to participate in the contest on behalf of the Tianyan Kingdom. Taking a deep breath and holding back his inner anger, Long Yuan coldly said, Yun Luofeng, I'll let you go this time, but next time you won't be so lucky. Long Yuan snorted coldly, and a killing intent flickered across his narrowed eyes. Then he winked at General Li. The message was delivered in silence. General Li coughed. As his commanding voice rang, the field quieted down in an instant. The semi-finals are now over. The teams entering the final are the Tianyan Kingdom, the Wushuang Empire, the Luoyu Empire, the Tianwei Empire and Chu Feihua tightly clenched his fist. If it were not for Yun Luofeng, he would have ranked among the top 5. It was all her fault. General Li looked at noble consort Ling, received her hint and continued, the Fengyun Kingdom and the Lanxiang Kingdom. This time, even Chu Feihua was stunned. According to the rule, only 5 teams could enter the final. The Lanxiang Kingdom didn't even rank among the top 5, so how could they enter the final? I know you are confused. In the past contests, if 2 teams had the same ranking in the semifinal, their final ranking would be decided according to their ranking in the preliminary contest. In the preliminaries, the Fengyun Kingdom ranked above the Lanxiang Kingdom, and both of them won 3 rounds in the semifinal, so the Fengyun Kingdom should rank the 5th and the Lanxiang Kingdom the 6th. But we decided to let the Lanxiang Kingdom enter the final too. General Li looked serious and his eyes became sharp. Though the Wushuang Empire and the Tianyan Kingdom both ranked first in the semifinal, the Tianyan Kingdom should rank first according to the preliminary results. The whole field was silent, and everyone was wondering what the Tianwei Empire wanted to do. Now that Yun Luofeng had an open conflict with the Tianwei Empire, why did the Tianwei Empire give the first place to Yun Luofeng? Their behavior was really puzzling. However, they soon learned the purpose of the Tianwei Empire. To be fair, the Tianwei Empire will provide you with weapons in the upcoming final, and the lowest ranking team shall have the right to choose their weapons first. The lowest ranking team had the right to choose their weapons first. In other words, the Lanxiang kingdom would choose their weapons first, while Yan Luofeng, the champion of the semifinal, could only take the leftovers. And they call this fair? Many players felt it was really unfair to Yan Luofeng, and were angry at the Tianwei Empire's behavior. However, afraid of the power of the Tianwei Empire, they didn't dare to say anything but only despise them in their heart. The Tianwei Empire is really shameless, Yi Eximo scorned with a sneer. Chapter 10-15, Final 2. Certainly, he knew that the Tianwei Empire's purpose was to make trouble for the Tianyan kingdom. Yan Luofeng slightly lifted her eyes and cast a wicked glance at Long Yuan, and a smile appeared on her gorgeous face. Her smile was breathtakingly beautiful, but everyone could feel how angry she was because she smiled devilishly. Elder brother, she said, turning her eyes to Yi Eximo, you just need to remember, a weapon is only a tool for spirit cultivators. No matter how powerful a weapon is, it will be useless in a trash's hands. Upon hearing this, Chu Feihua's expression suddenly changed and he shouted angrily, Yan Luofeng, what do you mean by that? Who are you calling a trash? Yan Luofeng wickedly glanced at him, whoever acknowledges that he is one. Hearing her words, Chu Feihua was trembling all over with anger. He glared at her gorgeous, wicked face and gnashed his teeth, good, very good. I hope you can still be so confident in the finals. Frowning, General Li interrupted them. The final is a free-for-all. The 6 nations will be divided into 3 teams. That is to say, 2 countries form a team, and you can choose your teammate for yourself. The final was designed to stop Yan Luofeng from winning. The Lanxiang kingdom and the Tianwei Empire always sang the same tune, so they would surely attack Yan Luofeng first. The Wushuang Empire and the Luoyu Empire would not allow a small country to get the upper hand. Therefore, the Tianyan kingdom would be the common target for attack. Among the 3 teams, the one defeated earliest will be eliminated, and then the other 2 teams shall continue to fight. When there is only one team left, the 2 countries in the team shall fight with each other. In other words, one team would be eliminated when the fight began, and then the 2 teams left would fight with each other. When the winner was decided between the 2, there would be only one team left. And then the fight between the 2 countries in the same team would begin. It's getting late. Lanxiang Kingdom, please choose your weapons now and the other teams shall wait. Chu Feihua coldly glanced at Yan Luofeng, swaggered to the ring with lofty steps, and picked out the best one among the weapons. The other players of the Lanxiang Kingdom also picked the most desirable weapons and walked into the ring with a smile on their face. The other countries also chose the best ones from the remaining weapons, so when it was the Tianyan Kingdom's turn, only a few clubs and blunt swords were left. Yan Luofeng looked around and randomly picked up a club. She slightly narrowed her eyes and smiled wickedly, this club looks good, perfect for beating someone's brains out. Long Yuan sniffed at the girl's words. The outcome of the final contest was clear. The Wushuang Empire and the Luoyu Empire would surely form a team, and the Tianwei Empire would probably form a team with the Lanxiang Kingdom. And then only the Fengyun Kingdom and the Tianyan Kingdom would be left. After the contest began, the 4 countries would certainly attack Yan Luofeng at the same time. At that time, the person whose brain was beaten out could only be her. As Long Yuan expected, without any hesitation, the Luoyu Empire chose the Wushuang Empire and formed a team with the latter. The Lanxiang Kingdom also stood by the side of the Tianwei Empire. Only the players of the Fengyun Kingdom and the Tianyan Kingdom were left, speechlessly looking at each other. Chapter 10-16, Final 3. Xiao Yuqing gazed at Yan Luofeng with his clear, cool eyes, a complex gleam in his dark eyes. I never expected that we would fight side by side one day. The audience was all stunned. Xiao Yuqing, the famous player of the Fengyun Kingdom, turned out to be an old acquaintance of Yan Luofeng. What a coincidence. Yan Luofeng smiled, her eyes curved. Guess who'll be the champion? You or me? Xiao Yuqing thought Yan Luofeng would ignore him and didn't expect she would ask him a question. Suddenly, his heart relaxed, and he answered her, pursing his thin lips. It must be you. I haven't seen you for years and your strength has improved a lot. I'm looking forward to fighting with you in the final. Hearing her words, Xiao Yuqing raised his head, his eyes resolute. Okay, I'll wait for you in the final. Speaking these words, the two seemed to be certain that the winning team had to be them. It seemed that Yun Luofeng's friends were all arrogant and cocky. Ridiculous, said Chu Feihua, glancing at both of them with a sneer. What makes you think you can win? Just stop the silly bragging. Xiao Yuqing slightly frowned, and coldly glanced at Chu Feihua. Before he spoke, a group of people behind him had stood up and cursed Chu Feihua. Did you forget you've been defeated by our Fengyun kingdom twice? How dare you humiliate young Master Xiao? Young Master Xiao is so powerful that a person like you is simply no match for him. Apparently, Xiao Yuqing was very popular in the Fengyun kingdom. Even the royal princes and princesses followed him like his fans. Humph. Chu Feihua changed his face and snorted coldly, since you are so confident, let's have a fight afterward and see which one of us is stronger. The atmosphere in the ring suddenly became very tense. At this time, General Li declared that the contest began. Everyone pulled out their weapons and rushed at their opponents. Attacked both front and rear, Yun Luofeng and Xiao Yuqing stood back to back and stared at the people dashing at them. Leave the Wushuang Empire people to me, Yun Luofeng chuckled, looking relaxed and not nervous at all, and you solve the Luoyu Empire people, all right. She wasn't asking Xiao Yuqing to lead the other players of the Fengyun kingdom to fight with the Luoyu Empire people, but asking him to confront all the Luoyu Empire players alone. Xiao Yuqing nodded, his voice as cool as ever, all right. Then let's see who'll finish the battle first. Yun Luofeng slightly narrowed her eyes and smiled wickedly. As for the Tianwei Empire and the Lanxiang Kingdom, let's leave them to other players of your country and my subordinates. Irritated by her arrogant words, the players of the four countries all gnashed their teeth. A player of the Tianwei Empire who was especially hostile to them released an extraordinarily intense murderous aura and intended to kill Yun Luofeng in one shot. As the man approached, Yun Luofeng looked back at Long Yuan and asked, is killing allowed in this contest? Long Yuan paused. If he said no, he would not be able to kill her with this chance. So he nodded, a sword has no eyes. Manslaughter happens. That's great. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly, suddenly lifted the club in her hand and hit the player of the Tianwei Empire hard on the head. Chapter 10:17, Final 4. Bang. The sound of a head exploding rang in the field and the man's brain suddenly burst out and reddened the back of his head with blood. As I expected, a club is way handier than a knife or a sword. Yun Luofeng smiled and cast a wicked glance at the crowd. Then she spoke to Xiao Yuqing behind her. Come on, let's see who'll solve the opponents first. With that, she rushed into the crowd. An eye for an eye was Yun Luofeng's principle. The Tianwei Empire tried to kill her over and over again, so she had no mercy on them. But the Wushuang Empire people just wanted to defeat her, so she didn't launch any deadly attacks against them. After all, she wasn't a bloodthirsty person. She only killed people who wanted to kill her. Seeing the power of Yun Luofeng and Xiao Yuqing, Long Yuan, who was still sneering, suddenly froze and shivered. God-level spirit cultivator. His eyes were filled with disbelief, both of them are God-level spirit cultivators. And Yun Luofeng is even a God-level intermediate rank spirit cultivator. Among the young talents of the 6 countries, only Annulling of the Wushuang Empire had become a God-level intermediate rank spirit cultivator. Because of this, Annulling, a few years older than Yun Luofeng, was called a rare genius. If Yun Luofeng had such strength when she was still so young, who else could match her on this continent? Long Yuan suddenly regretted what he had done to Yun Luofeng. If he had been aware of Yun Luofeng's real strength, he would not have treated her like that. However, what had been done couldn't be undone. No matter how he regretted it, he couldn't change anything now. She is a God-level intermediate rank spirit cultivator. Noble consort Ling clenched her fists, and resentfully stared at Yun Luofeng, her nails deep into her palm. This bitch said she was a sky-level advanced rank spirit cultivator when signing up. Why did she suddenly become a God-level intermediate rank spirit cultivator now? She must be deliberately hiding her strength. If I let this woman continue to grow up, she will threaten me one day. The other people were also stunned at Yun Luofeng's strength and stared at her in astonishment. Seeing that Annulling could hardly resist her attacks, everyone looked dumbfounded, as if they were watching an ant beating an elephant. This was simply unbelievable. Under Yun Luofeng's attack, the players of the Xuanhuan Empire were gradually routed and many of them had fallen down out of the ring, groaning on the ground. Young Luo Feng suddenly stopped her attack and frowned. I want to eliminate the Lanxiang Kingdom and the Tianwei Empire much more than the Xuanhuan Empire, so. She turned around and waved the club in her hand. Swoosh. The remaining players of the Lanxiang Kingdom and the Tianwei Empire were swept out of the ring and dropped into the crowd with a thud. Staring at young Luo Feng in astonishment, Lan felt something strange spread in his heart. Seeing young Luo Feng approaching him, he quickly raised his hand. Don't bother, I'll get down myself. It was better to admit defeat than to be swept off the ring. Therefore, Lan, sensible enough, jumped off the platform and nodded to young Luo Feng. At first, he didn't want young Luo Feng to get the upper hand of the three empires, but now he realized that the girl was not an ordinary person and was bound to be somebody one day. Before young Luo Feng began to bear a grudge against the Xuanhuan Empire, he had to stop fighting against her. Otherwise, with her talent, she would probably seek revenge against the Xuanhuan Empire in the near future. Seeing the Xuanhuan Empire retreat, the Luoyu Empire players had no desire to continue fighting, so they jumped out of the ring and awkwardly left the field. Chapter 10:18. Let's go watch young Luo Feng tame the beasts. They won. The underdog won the game. In particular, they had defeated 4 other countries. Feeling Long Yuan's rage, General Li hurriedly cleared his throat and said, now that the Tianyuan Kingdom and the Fengyun Kingdom won, you two can start fighting and decide who will be the final winner. Xiao Yuqing looked at young Luo Feng and said coolly, I concede. Let alone others, even young Luo Feng frowned and turned her eyes to Xiao Yuqing. Don't forget that we had agreed to fight in the final. Don't tell me you want to throw in the towel without fighting. Xiao Yuqing nodded, I have already won second place for the Fengyun Kingdom. I don't owe them anything now. Besides, I don't think I can defeat you. Not expecting such a situation, General Li froze. When he was going to say something, Long Yuan's furious voice rang. You want to concede? I won't allow it. You two have to fight. Since you two are old friends, then I must see you fight against each other. Only in this way can I vent my anger. If it were someone else, he might fear the majesty of Long Yuan. Unfortunately, the person he met was Xiao Yuqing, who never yielded to anyone. So, not even looking at Long Yuan, Xiao Yuqing just led the Fengyun Kingdom players to leave the ring. Seeing his graceful bearing, many women present feel their hearts skip a beat. I've decided that I will stop loving Lu Chenyi and give my love to Xiao Yuqing. Did you see his behavior just now, so cool and manly? Compared with Xiao Yuqing, I admire young Luo Feng more. Although I am a woman, I wouldn't mind having an affair with her. Quote. I do think Xiao Yuqing and young Luo Feng would make a good couple. However, young Luo Feng already has a husband. Maybe this is an unrequited love. What a shame. The crowd was in an uproar. But no one could deny that after these two contests, young Luo Feng's name would spread throughout the world. Let's go back to rest, young Luo Feng said, stretching out lazily. There'll be one last contest tomorrow. She slightly narrowed her eyes and raised the corners of her lips. When tomorrow's contest finished, she could finally go back home. The next day. Though it was dawn, the streets were quite bustling. Everyone was talking about these contests, and whenever they mentioned young Luo Feng, their eyes were full of respect for her. At last, everyone was shouting a word and their voice spread throughout the streets, which was, let's go watch young Luo Feng tame the beasts. And everyone was rushing towards the pit to occupy a good seat early so that they could watch young Luo Feng's performance. Therefore, when young Luo Feng arrived at the pit, she was stunned at what came into her sight. The whole pit was packed with people, and even the aisles were occupied. If the beast-taming field below were not that dangerous, perhaps the audience would have rushed into it and possessed the beast cages. Damn it, Yi Eximo couldn't help but swear, why are there so many people today? For the medical or the martial contest there hadn't been so many people like today. Perhaps all talented people of these countries and even the Tianwei Emperor's aristocrats and imperial family members had come here to watch young Luo Feng tame the beasts. Chapter 10:19. All the beasts bowed to her. Miss Yun. Seeing young Luo Feng, a young man excitedly ran to her and reached out his hand to hold her hand. However, his arm was suddenly seized by a large hand. Yi Eximo grabbed his arm, raised his eyebrows and shouted coldly, "Stay away from my sister-in-law." The young man blushed and hurriedly explained, "Young Master Yi, you misunderstood me. Miss Yun is my idol. I was just too excited, so I did something improper." Saying these words, the young man turned to Yun Luofeng and continued, "Miss Yun, we have a completely new appraisal of the Tianyan Kingdom because of your performance in the previous 2 contests. So, I believe, in terms of beast taming, you are also a genius. By the way, I'm a physician. May I join the Tianyan Kingdom team and serve you?" Looking at his eager face, Yun Luofeng slightly raised her lips and her eyes were shining with a wicked light. The slightest facial expression of hers was so charming that people couldn't turn their eyes away from her face. "If one day there is a power called the Medical Tower, I welcome you to join it." Saying this, Yun Luofeng slowly walked to the beast-taming field. Her figure looked slender, and her hair was fluttering in the wind. With shining eyes, the young man stared unblinkingly at the girl who walked away and murmured in a resolute voice, "My name is Mo Yi. If one day there is really a power called the Medical Tower, I will definitely go join it no matter how far away I am." Yun Luofeng stopped and continued to walk onto the field without looking back. A few of players had been waiting on the field, and when they saw the girl walking in, they all froze and unconsciously backed up a few steps. Was this crazy woman also participating in the beast-taming contest? Then they would have no hope of winning this time. "Can we start now?" Yun Luofeng turned her eyes to the referee and asked mildly. Perhaps Long Yuan and noble consort Ling hadn't recovered from the previous blow, so they didn't show up here. The referee paused, wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and said with a smile, "I will release the spirit beasts out of their cages soon. The rule is that the one who tames the most spirit beasts in 10 minutes will be the champion." Saying this, the referee ordered the guards to open the cages. Soon, those spirit beasts that had finally regained their freedom rushed out of the cages like crazy and jumped toward the people on the field. At this time, Yun Luofeng released a powerful aura. Looking from a distance, there was a red glow over her head in which there was the image of an 8-tailed fiery red fox. Everyone was stunned at this scene. Feeling the girl's aura, all the spirit beasts stopped, looked at her in horror and fear and didn't dare to approach her any further. As the crowd wondered, these spirit beasts suddenly fell to their knees in unison and respectfully bowed to Yun Luofeng. The beasts would only bow to their king. With her white robe fluttering in the wind and her hands cupped behind her back, she stood still among the beasts and watched them kneeling down to her. She was like the queen of the world, watching her people groveling at her feet. The whole pit quieted down. Both the crowd and the players kept silent. Chapter 10:20. Asking for retirement. Everyone looked at Yun Luofeng, their eyes mixed with shock, doubt, and adoration. They had thought that it was rare for her to win the first place in both medical and martial contests, but it never occurred to them that beast taming was what she was really good at. She just stood there doing nothing and the beasts knelt down and bowed to her. Who else in the world was capable of this? Is the contest over? Her languid voice finally brought the stunned referee back to his senses. He wiped the sweat from his face again and said with a wry smile, "You are already the champion." However, because of this special condition, he couldn't rank the other country's players. It seemed that he had to inform His Majesty to arrange another contest for the players of the other countries. "Let's go." Yun Luofeng shrugged, turned around, stepped out of the ring, and slowly walked to the side of Yi Eximo and others. "The contest is over. Elder brother, take the prize. Now I'm leaving for a rest. Let's set off for home tomorrow." There were generous prizes for each contest, and Yun Luofeng won 3 contests in succession. At the thought of this, everyone looked at Yun Luofeng with awe. After this time, the Tianyan Kingdom's status among the countries would be greatly boosted. In the inner courtyard of the Imperial Palace, Long Yuan, who was reviewing the minister's reports in the Imperial study, heard the report about the beast taming from the subordinates and fell silent. He had a strange feeling that he might have made a wrong decision to become the enemy of Yun Luofeng. However, what had been done couldn't be undone, and he could only bite the bullet. Suddenly, a eunuch rushed in and reported, "Your Majesty, Master Qing Mu asks to see you." Long Yuan frowned and said expressionlessly, "Let him in." I'd like to know why he came here. The eunuch took his order and left, and soon Qingmu, cyan-robed, came in from the outside. He made an obeisance and came straight to the point. Your Majesty, I am already old, so I often feel powerless working in the Imperial Hospital. I hereby beg your Majesty to allow me to retire. Long Yuan paused. He had long wanted to get rid of this old man. However, when he came for resignation himself, it just didn't feel right. So he asked with a cold face, Qingmu, is it because the Wuxuang Empire and the Luoyu Empire are wooing you? So you decided to serve them? He didn't mention the other countries. Because those small countries couldn't offer conditions attractive enough to Qingmu. Those that were able to poach Qingmu could only be the two empires. Qingmu hung his head and made an obeisance again. Your Majesty, I can give a written pledge promising not to join the Wuxuang Empire or the Luoyu Empire after I leave, so your Majesty can rest assured. Hearing this, Long Yuan nodded. Qingmu, since you are determined to leave, I permit you to retire. Thank you very much, your Majesty. Qingmu raised the corners of his lips and gave a relaxed smile. He finally unloaded his burden and was able to live the life he longed for from now on. After Qingmu left the imperial study, just when Long Yuan was going to continue to review the reports, a eunuch came in and reported that Zhe Yang was asking to see him. Long Yuan frowned and a bad feeling arose in his heart. He raised his head, with a sharp gleam in his dark eyes. Zhe Yang wanted to see him. Did the old guy want to resign too? However, while Long Yuan was thinking about it, Zhe Yang rushed in from outside in a panic and fell on his knees in front of Long Yuan with a bang. Chapter 1021. Be Fooled 1. Your Majesty, I'm in trouble. My disciple just injured the Wuxuang Empire's people. Long Yuan's heart sank and he asked with a dark face, what happened? Zhe Yang looked very flustered. My disciple had a dispute with the Wuxuang Empire's prince, so they tried to catch him. To protect my disciple, I accidentally injured several players of the Wuxuang Empire. What should I do now? Seeing Zhe Yang's unfeigned panic, Long Yuan felt his heart gradually sank to the bottom. He had let Qingmu go. Would he lose Zhe Yang too? However, if he let him stay, he might encumber the Tianwei Empire. Zhe Yang, since this is you and your disciple's fault, you shall solve it yourself. I won't interfere. Your Majesty, Zhe Yang crawled forward on his knees and pleaded, I've been serving the Tianwei Empire for so many years. How can you refuse to save me? I will never leave the Tianwei Empire, not until the day I die. Threatened by him, Long Yuan turned sullen, why should I deal with your mistakes? Guards, expel Zhe Yang and his disciples out of the Imperial Palace. And he shall never step into the Imperial Palace for the rest of his life. Zhe Yang lowered his head, so no one could see his expression. Then he slowly got up from the ground, his voice trembling, Your Majesty, do you mean that anyone registered as my disciple will be expelled from the Imperial Hospital? Exactly. Long Yuan said impatiently, the Wuxuang Empire is so powerful that even our Tianwei Empire cannot resist it. Do you want to make me your scapegoat? In the Imperial Hospital, besides Qingmu and Zhe Yang, he still had many other excellent physicians, so he didn't mind losing both of them. Zhe Yang kept his head down and said, since your Majesty has decided to give me up, I have to leave now. He turned around, and the moment he walked out, a smile appeared on his slightly raised face. He casually put his hands behind his back and strode away from the study. As if feeling a sharp stare on him, Zhe Yang quickly withdrew his high spirits and walked out like an outcast. As soon as he had left, he happily walked outside the Imperial Palace with his head held high and a smile on his face. In an inn. Annulling gently shook the teacup in his hands, a smile on the corners of his lips. He slightly raised his eyes, turned to the old man who pushed open the door, and said with a smile, Master Zhe Yang, did it work? It worked. Zhe Yang smiled and said, but we can't let Long Yuan find out the truth in case he regrets it. So I hope your highness can go to the Imperial Palace to ask Long Yuan to hand me in. Then he will not doubt it anymore. Master Zhe Yang, I know you and Master Qingmu will follow young Luo Feng after leaving the Tianwei Empire. Annulling gave a faint smile, so, in return for helping you, could you promise me one thing? If the Wuxuang Empire is in danger in the future, I hope Master Zhe Yang can help me persuade her to rescue us. Zhe Yong paused and frowned. Your Highness, I can do it, but it is not up to me whether Miss Yun agrees to rescue you or not. However, if your Highness needs my help, I will go help you no matter how far away I am. It'll be enough to mention a few words in front of her. I won't force it. And Lan was always a sensible person. In the beginning, just like the Luoyu Empire, he didn't want the Tianyan kingdom to take the first place. But then he stopped in time and tried to repair the relationship between the two sides. Chapter 1022. Be Fooled too. His sensibleness was something that other young and aggressive talents lacked. By the way, how many physicians of the Imperial Hospital will go with you? And Lan looked up at Zhe Yong and asked curiously. Zhe Yong chuckled, I'll take all the other physicians away with me except the ones I don't get along with. And Lan was surprised. Will Long Yuan allow this? Of course he won't, said Zhe Yong with a mysterious smile, so I asked him whether he wanted to expel everyone who was registered as my disciple. And just yesterday, I registered all those old men as my disciples. Long Yuan probably didn't expect that Zhe Yong would set such a big trap for him. Of course, a condition must be met for the trap to work, which was that Zhe Yong was forced to leave the Tianwei Empire. So he asked Lan for help, and Lan pretended to be angry and took his men to force Long Yuan to compensate his loss. In the end, Long Yuan had to leave the imperial palace with noble consort Ling to escape from the trouble. During this period, though the staff of the imperial palace found out that almost all the senior physicians of the imperial hospital were registered as Zhe Yang's disciples, they couldn't find Long Yuan to report it, so they had to expel all those people out of the imperial palace. When Long Yuan returned to the Tianwei Empire and found that there were only a few people left in the imperial hospital, he was so enraged that he wished he could tear the heavens apart. Then he realized that he had been fooled. Unfortunately, it was too late. That day, young Luo Feng rushed back to the Tianyan kingdom after taking the prizes. She didn't even say goodbye to Qing Mu because she knew that the day her medical tower was founded, Qing Mu would surely come. The Tianyan kingdom. The Yi residence. Zhen Fengling was conducting the servants and maids to decorate the houses, while Yi Jingchen was assisting them. At this time, a voice mixed with joy and surprise was heard. Master, Mistress, Miss Yun and young Master Mo are back. Fenger and Eximo are back. Glad to hear the news, Zhen Fengling quickly walked to the door. With an excited look, she fixed her eyes on the girl who was getting off the horse. Fenger, you're finally back. She smiled happily, her eyes shining with joy. Young Luo Feng looked around the Yi residence decorated with red cloth, and asked, Mother, is someone going to get married in our family? Zhen Fengling chuckled, we wanted to hold a wedding for your second uncle and Miss Ning when you came back. Look, we're decorating our house. The wedding can be held now that you have come back. All kinds of feelings welled up in young Luo Feng's heart. Ning Xin was impressed by the elegant demeanor of second uncle before she met him and then had a secret crush on him. Now her unrequited love was finally answered. She was really happy for her. Fenger, Mo, what was the result of the contests? Yi Jingchen came up to them with a smile, his voice kind and gentle. Zhen Fengling glared at him and sulked, I just wanted the kids to come back safely. Why do you ask about the results? It won't affect us whether they succeeded or failed. In her mind, nothing was more important than a family reunion. Even if they lost the contests, so what? She never cared about the results of the contests. Foster mother, Yi Eximo laughed and walked forward, I won't tell you the result of the contests now. It won't be long before you know it. Numerous countries had participated in the contests, so it wouldn't be long for the news to reach the Tianyan kingdom. Chapter 1023. Uninvited guests. At that time, his foster parents would certainly get a big surprise. Moer, it doesn't matter even though you lost. I don't mind it. You must be tired from the journey. Take a good rest. Seeing that Yi Eximo was unwilling to tell them the results, Zhen Fengling thought that they must have failed. She didn't blame them but instead tried to comfort them with a gentle voice. What mattered was always the process, not the result. The return of young Luo Feng and her teammates caused a great uproar in the Tianyan kingdom. A lot of people came to visit them, and even the imperial palace had sent someone to visit them. However, anyone who wanted to ask about the results was stopped by Zhen Fengling with a wink. So everyone thought that young Luo Feng failed in the contests. The emperor was a little disappointed, but he didn't blame the Yi family. After all, young Luo Feng had done him a great favor by agreeing to participate in the contests on behalf of the Tianyan kingdom. How could he blame her for not winning? Besides, if it weren't for her, the empress wouldn't have woken up. The emperor didn't blame the Yi family, but that didn't mean that other people wouldn't take the Yi family as tabloid fodder. When the Tianyan kingdom people were talking about the Yi family, 2 uninvited guests visited the Yi family. In the hall, Qing Mu leisurely sipped the tea in the teacup and gasped in admiration, "This tea is really good. I've never tasted such good tea. Gee, I want to stay in the Yi family forever." "It's really good tea," said Zhe Yong, smiling and glancing out of the hall. "I wonder when she'll be back." Just then, an old man hurried in from the outside. When he saw the 2 old men sitting drinking tea, his face changed and he quickly went up to them. "Master Qing Mu, Master Zhe Yong, why did you come here?" As the master of the Yi family, Yi Tian surely knew Qing Mu and Zhe Yong. However, he was at a loss as to why the 2 old men came to the Yi family. Was it because young Luo Feng offended them in the Tianwei Empire? "Well, we're here to find young Luo Feng." Yi Tian's heart sank and he hurriedly said, "Masters, Fenger is too young. If she offended you, I'll apologize to you on behalf of her. I hope you can forgive her for she is still a young girl." "Offend? When did she offend us?" Qing Mu looked at him strangely. "We are here to fulfill our promise to follow her. Why should you apologize to us?" Dumbfounded, Yi Tian was petrified on the spot. Did Master Qing Mu just say that they were here to follow Fenger? Did I hear it right? What's going on here? Yi Tian's lips quivered, and what he heard was so beyond him that his mind went blank. "Don't you know what happened?" Qing Mu asked in surprise. "Have you heard of the Tianwei Empire's medicine tower?" Yi Tian nodded blankly, as he did know about the medicine tower. In the contest, to embarrass Miss Yun, Long Yuan initiated the appraisal formation of the Tianwei Empire's Imperial Hospital. I only managed to reach the 5th floor of it, but young Luo Feng climbed to the 8th floor at a superhuman rate and won the 1st place in the medical contest. Boom. Hearing his words, Yi Tian felt as if his brain exploded, and he was standing still, stupefied and speechless. Young Luo Feng won the 1st place in the medical contest. Did I hear it right? Chapter 1024, Fief 1. It seems that you don't know what happened. Zhe Yang smiled. Miss Yun didn't only win 1st place in the medical contest, but also in the martial contest and the beast taming contest. Yi Tian was shocked and then stupefied. All kinds of feelings welled up in his heart and a sense of pride arose in his mind. Although young Luo Feng was not his biological granddaughter-in-law, Jun Fengling was already his daughter-in-law, so young Luo Feng could also be regarded as a member of the Yi family. When she made great achievements, the Yi family would also be honored. "Servants, invite young master, young mistress, and Fenger to come here," Yi Tian hurriedly ordered when he came to his senses. A servant took his order and left, and within a few minutes, Yi Jingchen, Jun Fengling, and young Luo Feng came to the sight of Zhe Yang and Qing Mu. The girl in a snow-white robe looked stunningly beautiful. She glanced at the 2 old men with her slightly narrowed eyes and gave a faint smile. "Why did you come here? Didn't I tell you that you can just come to visit me the day I found the medical tower?" Qing Mu laughed and stood up. "Miss Yun, we have submitted our resignations to His Majesty. Now we have no place to go. Could you please accept us as your subordinates?" Not knowing what happened, Jun Fengling and Yi Jingchen looked at each other in bewilderment. Qing Mu and Zhe Yang of the Tianwei Empire quit their official jobs and came to follow Fenger. What was going on here? Noticing their bewilderment, Yi Tian explained with a faint smile, "Juner, Chenur, maybe you don't know that Fenger won 1st place in the contests." "What? 1st place?" Jun Fengling turned her eyes to young Luo Feng and said in an excited tone, "Is this true? Did you really win 1st place?" Although Jun Fengling didn't care about young Luo Feng's achievements, how could she not be excited if her daughter-in-law could win the championship for the Tianyan kingdom? Under Jun Fengling's stare, young Luo Feng nodded. "I was looking for a chance to tell you about this. But I didn't expect that Master Qing Mu and Master Zhe Yang would come here." Listening to her words, Jun Fengling smiled happily, her eyes shining with joy. Fenger, which contest did you win? Her daughter-in-law was not only highly skilled in medicine but also unparalleled in fighting, so she would ask this question. Yi Tian looked at Yun Luofeng with a complicated look. This girl won in all 3 contests. Needless to say, how glorious it was to win all 3 of the contests. Therefore, after saying this, Yi Tian saw that Jun Fengling showed the same expression as he did when he first heard about this. He was quite pleased to see that. That everyone was frightened was way better than only him being frightened. Yi Tian slightly raised the corners of his lips, with a look of pride on his face. Fenger, finally coming back to her senses, Jun Fengling gently held Yun Luofeng's hand, and her beaming eyes were filled with pride. I am so proud of you. She believed this news would cause a great uproar on the continent. Master Yi, is there someone of your family going to get married recently? Zhe Yang asked curiously as he looked at the red lanterns and streamers decorated in the house. Yi Tian nodded slightly and smiled. There will be the wedding ceremony of Fenger's second uncle in a few days. If you two are free, you could stay here for a few more days and attend the wedding banquet. Chapter 1025, Fief 2. That would be great. As brazen as Qingmu was, he agreed without any hesitation and said with a smile, then I'll bother you for a few more days. Yun Luofeng didn't object to Qingmu and Zhe Yang staying. After talking with the 2 old men for a while, she went back to her room and continued to cultivate in the available time. Only when she became stronger could she go to another place and find her lifelong lover. The news about Yun Luofeng finally reached the Tianyan kingdom. Though the Yi family did not publicize it, it still created a great sensation in the Tianyan kingdom. In particular, those who thought Yun Luofeng had lost the contests were slapped hard by reality and were too ashamed to show up in public. She didn't talk about the contests not because she lost, but just because she didn't want to. How ridiculous that they thought she was too ashamed to talk about it. It had never happened before for a person to win all 3 contests, but now Yun Luofeng had done it. Besides, she won all 3 contests, so even the imperial physicians of the Tianwei Empire couldn't help but praise her. For a time, all the Tianyan kingdom people were excited at the news, and the Yi family that had been crowded with visitors had to receive even more visitors. Now, in the imperial study, seeing Yun Luofeng walking in, the emperor hurriedly put down his pen and got up to greet her, a big smile on his handsome face. Miss Yun, I have something to discuss with you. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows and asked, what's the matter? It's still about the contests, the emperor said with an excited smile. According to the rules, since our Tianyan kingdom won the first place this time, all the other countries will cede some land to us and I want to grant this land to you. Yun Luofeng gently stroked her chin, and her dark eyes glistened. She was worried about where to locate the medical tower. Now the emperor granted her this fief which perfectly solved her problem. Great. Yun Luofeng smiled languidly, looked up at the emperor and said in a wicked voice, I'll go to my fief after my second uncle gets married. Haha, in a good mood, the emperor couldn't help laughing. Miss Yun, it's really my honor to have a genius like you staying in my country. Don't worry, just go to your fief and I will take care of your family for you. As an emperor, what he said would carry weight. And he did keep his promise and do his best to protect the Yun family until Yun Luofeng returned. Yun Luofeng wouldn't have arrived home in time if it hadn't been for him. Yun Qingye's wedding was very grand. On that day, the gate of the Yi family was so jammed that if the emperor didn't send imperial guards to maintain order, the guests who came late would probably not be able to enter the Yi family. The Yi residence was decorated with red lanterns and streamers, and the maids and servants were busy shuttling back and forth, preparing feasts for the guests. With a big smile on his face, Yun Luo gladly listened to the congratulations of the guests. He was so pleased that his beard almost stuck high into the sky. Just then, a sound was heard, which was so clear in the noisy mansion. The envoy of the Yuelin kingdom is here to present a wedding gift to young Master Qingye. Yun Luo was stunned and quickly turned to Yun Luofeng, asking for her instruction on how to deal with it.